Hello, good evening and welcome ladies and gentlemen to another fine and epic round of racing action in the one and only Sim Racing Collective GT4 series, as brought to you on the premier sim racing platform available only on PC, known as iRacing. Season 3 continues its story, and for round 3 of 6, we've made our way to the United States of America for the first of multiple visits to the country for the season, and with it we have made our way to the Virginia International Raceway. Known as VIR in short, this circuit is much loved for its highly eclectic mix of straight and corner sequences, and it's an absolutely unrelenting circuit at that. With the best part of what is 3.27 miles in length and 17 corners, it is a circuit where the corners continue to hit hard from start to finish, and with the straights being extended but being narrow, overtaking around here is incredibly difficult even for the bravest of the battlers. The aim of the game here is to qualify well and put yourself on pole, and in doing so you may just be able to hold off your rivals lap after lap without the thought of a pit stop coming up. Indeed, pit stops will not be on the equation for today for our drivers, because of course we usher in an all new type of round for round number 3 of the championship, because it is the GT4 series first ever sprint type round. 2 races on the schedule today compared to our typical 1, and whereas in the previous rounds we have seen 40 minutes of racing action where one race decides where all the points go, indeed today you have 2 races on the schedule, which we'll come to shortly. No pit stops are expected unless drivers pick up instant points or damage to their cars, and therefore it will be flat out all the way from start to finish to see who will come away victorious. But where are my manners? Allow me to welcome you all to this live broadcast from Circuit Side as you tune in tonight on the YouTube channel of the Sim Racing Collective, the #1 source and the only source of this racing. Now of course it's at youtube.com and search for TSRC or the Sim Racing Collective, and you can be joining plenty of other individuals in there in joining in and watching the absolutely brilliant racing action. Indeed, to all of you guys and girls tuning in right now, we hope you're all doing well. And if you've had a bit of a difficult day, if for a Monday it's a frowny day, well, let's turn that frown upside down and into a big old smile as our drivers get set to impress you with some absolutely entertaining racing action here today at VIR. In terms of our schedule, times in the UK time zone, so currently Greenwich Mean Time, that's GMT, or Universal Coordinate Time at UTC, what we can see is in approximately 3 minutes time, we'll be making our way into our qualifying session as always. 10 minutes in duration, 3 flying laps plus an outlap available to our drivers, after which they'll then make the way to the grid for the first of our 2 races. The first of which is 15 minutes in length, the shorter of the 2 races today, and that will really feel like it's the ultimate sprint, and we'll see all the drivers roar the way away at approximately 8:15. After which there'll be a brief breather, a 5-minute warm-up, which will give our drivers an opportunity to cool down for a little bit before they build themselves up once again, and the adrenaline levels will surge back up to a maximum as they'll make the way to the grid for race number 2 at just gone at 25 tonight this evening, and that will be 25 minutes in length for the grid being set based on results of race number 1. We'll talk more about that shortly. And we'll see our drivers attack the circuit once again for an extra 10 minutes of racing, and we'll see who's going to come away victorious come that second race and therefore pick up the lion's share of the points. In the current TV, you have myself. My name is Paul Walsh, also known as TX1 or Britain a Spit, depending on what media you follow me on, and I'll be bringing you all your racing action over the entirety of the season. And what a season it has been so far. For speaking of the season so far, well, firstly, let's take another look at the calendar, because last time out, back on the 17th of November, we were at the Mugello Grand Prix circuit in Italy, and there, well, the racing was defined just as much by safety cars as it was by outright racing. In the 40 minutes of racing action, we had 2 extended safety car periods, and in only a grand total of approximately 15 minutes of racing. And indeed, it really felt as though it was the sprint of Mugello, and what an oscillating race it was, whether you were looking at the pro drivers or the AM drivers. But in the end, it was a win for Alessandro Dalladone at the very front of the field, overall in pro, with Kieran Sharp making a major error right towards the end of the race, which cost him the chance to run away with victory. And indeed, for Dalladone, it was the chance to really prove himself at the very top, whereas other drivers, including both Tom Davidson and also Matt Cheverton, looking for a little bit more out there, although it has to be said, Matt Cheverton did put on a great display, and Andrew Pike as well was in the mix. Meanwhile, in the AM class, we saw at VIR, it was Daniel Moffat and Francesco Cordulo who both looked very quick, but Cordulo in the end was the one who brought home an absolutely brilliant victory, and well, there are plenty of shining stars in the AM class as well. Daniel Moffat was one of them, but he got caught up in the instance. Another one, of course, was Mark Davenport, who would absolutely have dominated proceedings, many would argue, because of his impressive pole lap that put him well ahead of the rest of the Anfield. However, the instance in the early stage of the race cost him dear, and therefore it really will feel as though it's the opportunity today for many of the drivers to get a reset in, and with that reset, try to build up some more momentum again and not think about what happened at Mugello. But after this round, we head into the second half of the season immediately next week, and on the 1st of December, to head into the 12th and final month of the year, we'll head to Belgium for the Grand Prix Lauter Zolder, after which we'll then make our way back to the US of A for the Sonoma Raceway circuit, circuit. It's sports car alternate layout, playing host to our second and final sprint race round of the season in round number 5. And then we bring everything to a close in Australia, down under at the very height of Mount Panorama Raceway, but you know and love it and refer to it as Bathurst, and that will be bringing the curtain down on an epic season of racing, indeed an epic season here at the Sim Racing Collective for 2025. So talking a little bit then about our circuit for today, well, of course it is the full course layout of VIR. Located near the village of Alton in the Halifax County of the US state of Virginia, 17 corners here which have withstood the test of time, and a big thank you to iRacing.com, not just for their brilliant simulator, but also the superb track maps that come with it, and with that we could not do without. But as the drivers make the way around this extensive course, they'll find that it's going to be a very challenging course to get used to, because plenty of these corners here, either whether they're flat or packing elevation changes, they are very late apexes at that, and deceptively early braking zones as our drivers make the way around. Horseshoe being one of the many corners at turn 1 where they'll see exactly that. But don't forget about the fact we've also got the sweeping run from Snake all the way up to South Bend from turns 5A all the way to turn number 10, where the circuit gradually rises and it's flat out all the way to turn number 9. Oak Tree Hairpin at turns 11 and 12, we can all expect a big fight there before our drivers make the way down the extensive back straight and into Roller Coaster Bend at turns 14 and 15, the Virginian corkscrew if you will, like Laguna Seca on the state of California, and as they make the way into Hogpen Corner, they'll complete that very quickly, only to do it all over again or see a checkered flag. As for our rules, well, here's the rule set for the sprint race round. This continues to be a fixed setup series, of course, no changes to that, and all the setups provided to our drivers ahead of each and every round of racing. As for the qualifying session, it's a closed qualifying format being used with drivers having their outlap plus 3 flying laps available over the course of a 10-minute window. The sprint races, however, this is where the intrigue is. The race 1 grid, you can assume, will be set based on the results of qualifying. That's a given. But for the race 2 grid, it shall be set based on the finisher positions of race 1. What does that mean? It means wherever our drivers finish in race 1, that's exactly where they start in race number 2. So if you win race 1, you start on pole for the purposes of race number 2. So the aim of the game here, particularly at VIR, is to put yourself on pole, win race 1, and then give yourself the best possible chance to win race number 2. Whereas those who finish a bit further down, they'll have to fight the way through. Now each driver has one fast repair available should they need it in a given race. We may also see them come into the pit lane for a drive-through penalty if they accumulate 17 or more instant points. Meanwhile, all race stewarding shall be conducted post-round. And I don't envy our stewards who have plenty of work to do for Magello, but they finally got through it all, and plenty of licence points have been dished out, but no penalties are coming into this round. But as we come back to our circuit side, as qualifying does get underway, let's talk about the championship standings then coming into this round. And after 2 rounds of racing with drop scores being applied immediately, we can see it's a tie at the top in the pro class for Tom Davidson and Alessandro Dalladone, with both drivers there with a win apiece and right now on 30 points each. But behind the Sim Racing Collective Esports and the Italian job drivers, we do have Kieran Sharp there in third on 24 points for TSRC, just ahead of teammate Andrew Pike, whose highest result so far has been a 3rd place, and that was from our season opener. Matt Cheverton, he continues to move forward for Aztec Racing. He's looking pretty impressive there in the 390 car. Head of Cracked Racing's Felix Smoggy in the 284. And then we do have Francesco Petalin, the one driver we're waiting to see when he's going to hit his stride, because the absolute motorsport ace lift driver has been denied twice now. First at Alton Park and then at Magello, a very quick driver that has yet to get absolutely things on the ball. And well, if he can do it the 3rd time today, he may be laughing all the way to the checker flag. Marlon Schwab sits in 8th, just ahead there of Martin Blankensteiner by a single point. And from the DLR, FP1 and Cracked Racing drivers, your top 10 is completed by Craig Twardle there for MSA Racing, who is starting to find his form, much like in the MX-5 series that preceded this. Best of the rest in 11th place is Jack Southfield for TSRC, ahead of iRacing Esports' Alan McCain. And you do have Miles Owens and Mav Gardner just ahead of Ivan Falcone, who complete your top 15. Nick Clemens sits in 16th place, and he's the last with points to his name, and yet to score any points in the class, we do have there Bobby Moss, Lucas Sauer, and Louis Hesketh. But what about in the AM class meanwhile? Well, here we can see with the AMs, the story is all about Daniel Moffat and Francesco Cordulo at the very top. 30 points between the 2 drivers there, both a win apiece. Manx Racing's Mark Davenport, he'll be looking to try and take a win today, given the fact he was the favourite last time out at Magello, but the race ahead otherwise. The Isle of Man driver then being followed up by Bart Raven, who has been moved to the AM class as this round, and we've also seen Sam Smith move to the AM class from Pro, based on what the stewards and the organisers decided, based on relative pace. and their points have been updated from the first 2 rounds to compensate for that. And you see Sam Smith there down in 6th place. However, between Raven and Smith is Petretti there, with the Italian job driver separating the Cracked Racing and Iris Esports drivers. And Craig Murphy in 7th place there for Manx Racing, indeed trying to channel a bit of Mark Davenport with regards to his performances, but it hasn't quite come through so far between himself and his teammate. But he is ahead, only a result countback versus Clive Bourne for Big Pig Racing by VRS. In 9th, it's Valerio Tedeschi, the privateer ahead of Bottle Job Racing's Lenny Hansen, and that is your top 10. And it's Mickey Ford, who's only outside the top 10 at the moment, based on result countback. And the FD Racing driver had a golden opportunity to take the win at Mugello, given the fact he went onto a no-stop strategy where everybody else pitted under the safety car, but unfortunately didn't quite work out. But he brought home a season-best performance of 4th place, shifted back to a 6th place finish as a result of the demotion of Raven and also Smith to the AM class. But Ford can't be discouraged at that, because he showed some great performances over the course of the season so far, and at Mugello in particular, he has really shone, and that's what we look forward to seeing more of here today. Martin Reynolds sits a point behind. He's ahead there of Palomaniti. And then we do have Paul Sims and Vincenzo Carillo completing your top 15. And behind him, based on result countback, is Luke Smith. And yet to score any points, we do have what is Nico Manuzzo, I should say, and also Joe Pinder, who complete your AM Championship standings. But as we then make our way into this round, well, our drive's already out there on their laps, and we are already the best part of 2, almost 3 laps into some of our drive's qualifying sessions. So we're not got too long left in this session when it comes to times, but that's a quick update on the championship standings. And well, right now it's looking as though Francesco Petlin is the fastest of everybody by 3.5 tenths there. Well, indeed, our eyes do not deceive us, versus Tom Davidson. So looking very quick and impressive, but how much further can he impress us all as he continues to push his way around the circuit? And well, the answer to that right now is he is going even quicker here. And well, if he's able to put another 10th into this, I think he's going to announce himself as the favourite. And the absolute most ace-lift driver, we are waiting to see just how strongly he can go in these sprint races, because we know that he is one of the quickest drivers on the grid when it's outright pace considerations and you don't put strategy in. As Petlin crosses the time in line, well, what's it going to be this time? Well, it's going to be a 52.989, so a strong lap there from Petlin. He'll be very happy with that, as we've got more times coming in. Kieran Sharp for a brief moment jumped up to pole, only then for Petlin to take it back. All these times are piling in quickly, and as they do, well, we need to get an onboard lap for you, ladies and gentlemen, and to do so, well, we are going to be jumping on board with one of our drivers who is just about to go onto a lap, I believe. In fact, we may have missed a trick there. In fact, no, it's Ivan Falcone, and the Italian job driver, who makes way at turn 1, and we will catch up with him at the next time he comes on around. But this circuit, a very tough circuit to get correct, and indeed some of the corner nicknames around here we're not allowed to repeat for the purposes of this broadcast, otherwise it would start to become 12 plus or 15 plus rated. Indeed, the corners do have some quite interesting nicknames when it comes to swear words, and that's just simply because they have been coined with those names over the years, particularly when it comes to American racing series. But also there is a bit of history steeped into this circuit, particularly NASCAR Bend at turn 3, which was the site in the 1980s of a major incident between multiple big championship drivers in NASCAR at the time, where they all had major offs in the road race at turn 3, and that's how it got the name of NASCAR Bend, because it was to the bane of the existence of many a NASCAR driver. But coming from NASCAR to GT4 racing, well, this circuit does play host to GT4 racing on an annual basis as part of the IMSA Sports Car Championship package, and we do see here the highest of our AM drivers at the moment demonstrating what he can do in the Porsche Cayman 718 GT4. It's Martin Rendell, the privateer, looking quite quick at the moment, it must be said. Only what is there a 10.5 faster than the next closest AM driver, Mark Davenport. But a key point being that Davenport is in the pit lane. He won't be getting any more laps in before all is said and done. So therefore it hasn't quite worked out for Davenport, but it's definitely worked out for Rendell here as he tries to raise the bar a little bit more. But we see Clibbins jumping up into 6th place. We also do see some more improvements as Petlin goes the fastest again, just ahead of Tom Davidson off camera. And that is Petlin now on a 52.769. And a very good lap there from Petlin, as Davidson in the end moves to 2nd. Kieran Sharp does not improve. Martin Rendell does not improve either, but as he cools things on down, well, is anybody else going to be finding some time out there? And the answer is going to be not necessarily, as we jump aboard with Ivan Falcone for a flying lap. So making his way into the opening quarter here, braking about 170 metres from quarter entry apex. As he comes through turn 1, you'll see it's a very long quarter here. You take a sharp initial turn in, and then the car opens up there on the exit. Now, heading to turn number 2 here. And straight in the car to break into turn 3, into NASCAR bend. Runs it nice to the apex there. Runs a little bit wide, but he recovers the car. Now into turn number 4. The left into right, known as left hook. And that's a boxing reference. He now comes into turn number 5 and through the snake as he builds up the throttle. And now flat out he'll go all the way through turns 5, 5A, and all the way up to turn number 10 at South Bend. But as he does so, the Italian job driver here is able to open up that 6.3 litre V8 engine the Mercedes has. But you'll notice here, it's no longer a straight. He weaves his way through turn 7, then 8, and then listen closely. It's a lift into turn 9 and then onto the brakes to pitch the nose forward into turn number 10. As he comes down the hill, now it's over to the left-hand side for Oak Tree Bend at turns 11 and 12. Braking out the 100-metre marker. Trail braking all the way to turn number 12. Turn 11's just the setup. Turn 12's where it really matters. And Falcon now back on full throttle and we get to hear the lovely roar of that V8 engine. As he makes his way up the hill then to one of the highest points on the circuit. Indeed, the elevation changes come quick and fast. He gets ready now for turns 14 and 15. Into the Virginian corkscrew he goes. Left into right here, having to brake into a kink. Blind there as he comes into 14. Runs a little bit deep, carries a bit too much speed into the corner, but gets it back together. Coming down through turn number 15. But that, ladies and gentlemen, will be the end of the qualifying session, unfortunately, because we do strike the clock. And with that, I believe we are going to head to the grid instead now for our first race of the day. And here we go then. This is how they'll all line up for the first of what is our 2 races. And taking a maiden pole position here today is Francesco Petalin for Absolute Motorsport Ace Lift. A lovely lap for about 52.769. And as the Italian driver puts himself a pole, well, Tom Davidson will join him on the front row there for TSRC Esports, separated by 1.3 tenths. Now in the background, what you may be noticing is for the purposes of this full lap formation lap, they're all starting in the pit lane. And that is the tradition here at VIR, that they don't start on the grid for the purposes of the formation lap. They start from the pit lane and head on round from there. On the second row of the grid, it is going to be Kieran Sharp for the Sim Racing Collective Esports in the company of the Italian jobs Alessandro Dalladone. With those 2 drivers getting very firm with each other in our previous round at Mugello, and they'll be continuing their fighting here today at VIR. Marlon Schwab starts in 5th there for DLR FP1. The German driver having his best qualifying performance of the season so far with that 5th place, and I think he'll be very happy and looking to move forward from there. How you do have to keep in mind he's 6.5 tenths off the overall pole time, and therefore I do wonder whether his focus will be trying to take on 4th place, because the Italian job driver at Dalladone was only 100th faster, if that. But if not, he'll have plenty of pressure from Nick Clemens behind. It was a 10th off for iRacing Esports. And then we do have Martin Brendel, your AM pole sitter. He starts in 7th place there. A great effort from Brendel, and very similar in a way to what Mark Davenport was able to achieve at Mugello, which was to put himself inside the overall top 10 in qualifying and leave all the other AM drivers behind by the best part of several places. Of which you'll see the second of our AMs at the bottom right of the grid. In 12th place, that's Valerio Petretti for the Italian job. But along the way, you have got another 4 pros. First of which is Felix Smoggy, who starts in 8th place for Cracked Racing. The German driver there being followed up by the 2 Britons of the Sim Racing Collective Esports is Andrew Pike and also Craig Twardock for MSA Racing. And Pike having a bit of a difficult qualifying session here today, and therefore he'll be looking to try and improve from his 9th place spot. Outside the top 10, we have Martin Blankensteiner, the Flying Dane, for Cracked Racing, who begins the day best the rest in 11th. And then you do come to Valerio Petretti, who starts in 12th place. The Italian job driver setting his season best qualifying performance thus far, but behind him on row number 7, it's Matt Cheverton for Aztec Racing, who seems to have struggled a little bit in qualifying today, but he's ahead of Daniel Moffat, one of the championship leaders in the AM class, but Moffat taking only 3rd in qualifying, and he will need to look a bit further forward. Well, that's 14th overall, but 3rd in class, and that's what matters most to him. Mark Davenport begins the day in 15th for Manx Racing, wondering where the pace of Mugello has gone, but I suspect that might be the flow of the circuit that's caught him out a little bit, with Francesco Cardulio, one of the championship leaders in the AM class, only managing the 16th overall, or what equates into a grand total of 5th place in AM for Passione Corse. But from the Italian driver, it's then going to be the recently demoted Bart Raven, moving from Pro to AM. But the Cracked Racing driver there will know that his competition is still going to be firm and fast, and he's still got to impress, as he'll be in the company of the Pro driver Mav Gardner alongside, who starts 18th for the Sim Racing Collective Esports. We then do have Craig Murphy Begin the day in 19th place amongst Racing. Once again, not too far behind his teammate at Davenport, but wondering where the pace has gone with the half a second between the two of them. And then Alan McCain completes top 20 as that's Alan McCain spinning in the rear of the picture, getting it wrong coming out of turn number 5. And well, he'll very quickly try to get the car turned around once all the field's come through, but he's going to have to hurry up on this formation lap as always he'll be starting from the very back of the field. And he'll have a lot of grass on his tyres and also quite a big flat spot there. But the iRacing Sports driver will now get the hurry up, but he then gives way to Paul Sims, who'll be starting in 21st place, the privateer, ahead of Ivan Falcone for the Italian job. We then have Paolo Maniti starting 23rd, the Italian just ahead of Lenny Hansen for Bottle Job Racing. And then behind them on a row, number 13 in the grid is Valerio Tedeschi, the privateer, ahead of Sam Smith for iRacing Esports, with Clive Bourne starting 27th for Big Pig Racing by VRS, and Luke Smith completing a starting order of 28 drivers here today. And keep in mind, your final three have yet to set valid qualifying times, and therefore it does mean they will be starting as they join to the qualifying order, but they're going to have to do all the work from towards the back of the grid. And I believe both Smith and, well, both of the Smiths, Sam and Luke, I don't believe they're related, funnily enough. I think they just share the same surname. They've both opted to start from the pit lane. So as all the drivers get themselves set, well, right now the field is already onto the back stretch, and that is how they all line up for our first of our 2 races here. And remember, this is our new sprint round format for round 3, and you'll see it again in round number 5 of the season. 2 races, the first of which is 15 minutes, the second of which is 25 minutes. No pit stops. It's all about flat out from start to finish. And you understand why Francesco Petzolin right now is weaving the car left, right and centre as he makes his way in his lane down the back stretch. He wants as much tyre temperature as possible, and alongside him is Tom Davidson, who wants all that tyre temperature as well, as they stay behind the safety car that is maintaining a very comfortable speed of the best part of only about 60 kilometres an hour. So this is a very slow formation lap, and they want every degree of tyre temperature, because if they can find it, they will be able to maximise it. Because remember, the one thing that's caught out so many drivers so far this season is the lack of tyre temperature at the start of the race, particularly in cold conditions. That's what plagued everybody at Mugello. But as the field now comes them down, they're building up speed behind that safety car, and they're not too far away from going green flag racing here at VIR for the first of 2 times today in round number 3 of season 3 of the Sim Racing Collective GT4 series on iRacing. And it's lights on, away we go here for race number 1 of the day as Francesco Petzolin looks to get the jump on Tom Davidson, but Davidson stays right with him there down towards turn 1. Door-to-door contact between the two of them. The field fans down into the opening corner, and as they all head onto the brakes, well, you can see right now that it's getting very, very thick and fast here between our drivers, as that's a bit of an elbow out there. Somebody almost onto the grass in the rear of the picture. I believe that might have been the escort of Craig Tardoc's car that's jumped up the orders. Cars coming off the road. That's your AM leader, and Martin Rendell, that's been escorted on around, and with him, he's in the company there, the Sim Racing Collective car of Andrew Pike. But there's more drama just in front there as more cars making the way into the braking zone. I do believe that Martin Blankenstein has dropped all the way down the order, minus the front bumper on the cracked racing Ford Mustang, and he's just behind Palamaniti and Valerio Tedeschi. So therefore Blankenstein's had a nightmare start to the race, so has Andrew Pike. But meanwhile, everyone else carries on here as our leaders start to bolt their way up the mid-straight. But as they do, Petzolin right now is pulling Davidson away with him, and behind, Marlin Schwab here fighting hard versus Felix Moggi, the 2 German drivers, both going toe-to-toe here, and Matt Cheverton's watching from behind, and Craig Tardoc's watching from in front. And Craig Tardoc has had a lightning quick start here in the BMW M4, the number 200 car. He's leapt his way from 10th to 6th as quick as that. In fact, he's up to 5th now, and well, Marlin Schwab and Felix Moggi are giving way as they head onwards. But there's more to come as Kieran Sharp here finds his McLaren under intense pressure now from Dalladone. And we're going to see here whether it'll be the reversal of fortunes, because you'll remember at Mugello that McLaren was very quick through the sweeping bends. It's very quick through the corners, but it's not as quick on the straight. The BMW, meanwhile, is the quicker down the stretches until they get to 6th gear. But 2 wide they come into the Virginian corkscrew, and as they do, we'll Dalladone on the inside there all the way through, but Sharp's not going to back off, because he will get the inside on the final exit, and that's going to put him a nose ahead here as they come down in towards turn 16 and 17. Twardock right now watching from behind, and these drivers all hopping their way on around as they make the way in towards turn number 17. But Daldoni right now staying close, and it's going to be Sharp who really leads the second half of the field, because meanwhile, after one lap of racing, Francesco Petrolin and Tom Davidson are starting to pull away. And as they come down towards the breakings over turn number 1, no change. But Kieran Sharp, he's in a free wide here. Daldoni looking around the outside, but Craig Twardock also getting very adventurous here. Twardock right now, I don't know what he's had for breakfast, but I can tell you one thing, what he's had for dinner is absolutely firing him up, because he is absolutely charging right now. Felix Smoggy and Martin Schropp behind, still fighting with Matthew Sheraton. And Sheraton there trying to look for a move, can't quite find it on the Porsche Cayman in front of him. And Valerio Petretti, meanwhile, is your AM leader here, and right now in 9th place, doing an absolutely fantastic job of holding on to that lead after taking it off of what was the wayward machine of Martin Rendell at the start. The Italian job driver right now is not wasting this opportunity as he heads onto at the mid-stretch. But as he does, we get a replay of what happened at the start shortly, but we can't right now, because here are your two leaders. They are so close together. Petrolin and Davidson, if they were any closer, you can imagine that it would be the front bumper in that Mercedes would be truly mated into the rear block of the BMW M4 from Absolute Motorsport Aislip. But right now, Davidson pushing Petrolin hard here, and Petrolin wanting to hold on. He's not had any luck so far this season, Francesco Petrolin. He's done two very good jobs in qualifying, both at Alton Park and also at Mugello, but through circumstances out of his control in both races, things have fallen away, and strategy has also gone against him. This BMW has not been kind to him on fuel, and therefore it really is an opportunity for him to demonstrate right now that what he has as his ace up his sleeve is absolutely insurmountable pace. And we'll see what he's going to be able to do here as he comes in towards turns 14 and 15 again. But you can see that Mercedes of Davidson is getting very close on the end of the straight, and it's just in the braking zones where the BMW has a little bit more flexibility perhaps, albeit it is by minor margins. We're coming to the end of this tour as they come out of Hogpen Corner. Well, right now, will he make a pig of it, or will he get it absolutely right and make Davidson squeal? We'll see as they come onto a third tour of the circuit very quickly here, and the racing continues to build. But with that, we're going to wind it back a little bit and talk about the race start in particular, and indeed, when they all went green, what exactly happened. And here, ladies and gentlemen, is none other than the replay. So this was right at the beginning of the race, and well, it all started off well for your leaders in particular, but can we get a better perspective when we did go green flag racing? The answer is yes, we can. We can get the distant blimp view, and what you'll see is Petrolin nailed the start there to an extent, although Davidson waited to go around the outside him. But look for Martin Rendell a bit further down, and what you'll see is Craig Twardock on the very outside there for a brief moment, but then brought himself back into the middle. There's a Ford Mustang that went all the way round, and the tree line there not being too polite, and it looked as though pandemonium ensued, but we can't quite see what exactly happened. Let's try and get an alternative on board. Can we get it on board with Martin Rendell as he went green flag racing? And the answer is yes, we can. This was Rendell as they went green flag racing. So getting the power down. That was the 284 that tried going all the way around the outside. That was brave of your Ford Mustang driver there. 4 wide at the apex. That's not common here at VIR. And Rendell in the end tried to sneak up the inside of everybody, but as he did so, found himself being squeezed a little bit, but backed off. And then, oh, goodness me, somebody got turned, and that's what triggered Martin Rendell going sideways. So in the end, that explains the story of Martin Rendell, and we come back to your live racing. I do believe that may have been the car there being turned of none other, as I'm taking a look at those who fell down the order, it may have been Palamaniti who had a bit of a fall, although that doesn't sound quite right given their respective starting positions. We'll try and get you an update on that when we can, but definitely one driver there getting caught up quite nastily. But as we come back to your live racing, more to come, of course, as Petrolin right now holding on. And your 284 driver who went for that audacious move was this man, Felix Smoggy for Cracked Racing, who somehow managed to survive being on the outside of a 4-wide. That doesn't normally happen. And well, as they make the way onwards right now, Felix Smoggy absolutely rolling with the dice. And well, understandably, I think he fancies chances. If he hasn't bought a lottery ticket, I suggest he does go and do so. But meanwhile, Matt Cheverton up the inside here of Martin Schropp, taking the place for now. Schropp tries to go for the switchback here, and he's going to successfully trigger the counter-attack as they come in towards turn number 2. But as the Porsche driver got it around the outside here, he'll have the corner grip in that Porsche compared to the Mustang. And he's going to try and squeeze his way all the way around the outside, use all the racing room. Cheverton there, squeeze him a little bit on the entry into left hook bend. Understandably, he doesn't want to give him any more opportunities, and Cheverton will take the place. Lovely bit of work there from the 390 driver Cheverton. However, Schwab demonstrating as well that he's not here just to make up the field for DLR FP1, but unfortunately, he couldn't quite get the job done. Cheverton saw what was coming and said to him, right, I'm going to run you all the way to the edge of the circuit. I'll give you room to exist, but I'm only going to give you the bare minimum that you're allotted to. He's allowed to do that, and to be fair, a little bit of door rubbing like that, nobody's going to mind it. That's good old-fashioned GT4 racing. Further back down the order, well, this is Paul Sims under pressure from Martin Rendell as they fight over 19th place overall. Always 9th place in the AM class here with Bourne and Hansen right in front. And we are still trying to understand who exactly turned what was Martin Rendell there. Unfortunately, our replay's not been too kind, but drivers do make the way in towards Oak Tree Corner, going through the dip and into the rise. Rendell still on the mission to try and find his way through, but remember, wherever they finish in this race is where they start in the final race of the day, so therefore they want to make as much progress as possible. And Rendell right now glued to the back of Sims' car. BMW M4, however, in the hands of Paul Sims, are going to look lightning quick as Lenny Hansen has Clive Bourne for company here in the battle of the Mustang versus the BMW. If the BMW is quick on the straights, then the Mustang is absolutely lightning fast on the straights by comparison. And as he looks around the outside there, well, it will be Bourne who gets ahead for now. Sims, meanwhile, manages to keep Rendell at bay for just a little bit longer. That Porsche just doesn't have the straight line speed, even with a gargantuan slipstream off the back of the car in front of it. These drivers all nicely tucked together, and that's before you consider what's going on, meanwhile, in the top three of the AM class. Valerio Petretti is still your AM leader. There he is in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, and now the centre. But then the focus turns to Daniel Moffat in the number 10. He's currently in 10th place, quite poetically, but he's in 2nd place in AM, and he'll be happy with that, albeit he won't be happy that he has got a very hungry Mark Davenport behind him. And, well, Davenport very eager to make amends for what happened last time out, and a big mistake there from Moffat. Here comes Davenport looking up the inside, but unfortunately, his hunger for points rather than Taco Bell does not get sated there, and instead he has to sit behind a little bit longer as Francesco Cordulo behind is watching this quite eagerly. We stay on board here in the Mercedes AMG number 16 as he powers his way onwards towards the S's. And as he does so, will Davenport falling back a little bit there, and I think perhaps just backing off, knowing he doesn't want to close up too quickly, coming all the way up into South Bend, because the closer you are through here, the bigger the dirty air effect and the less room you have to negotiate your braking point. Whereas if he stays a bit further back and then closes up on the exit here, going into Oak Tree Corner, well, if he can close up enough, he'll be able to look for a move. As we do see Moffat goes a little bit deep, Davenport a bit more conservative with his entry line, but both drivers in the end negotiating it just as well as the other. And well, as they make the way now onto the back stretch, you can see that gap staying at 3 attempts and not closing nor opening. And it shows you how evenly matched these two drivers are. As a bit further behind, we do have there Ivan Falcone in the Italian job, the rather gold in that machine, the number 37 driver, who I had the pleasure of catching up with after the racing at Peugeot. He had a good time there and enjoyed himself, and he's been enjoying the racing so far this season, he tells me. And well, the Italian driver here today looking good so far, up into 14th place, having started all the way down in 22nd, and he's putting together a good run here for 10th place in the Pro class, and there's going to be some good points coming his way, with Mav Gardner just in front, and then Craig Murphy and Bart Raven fighting behind him, and the Manx racing driver here in a very lovely liveried Porsche. Well, he's under some big pressure from Raven as Raven's looking up the inside, and well, the cracked racing driver here is not going to waste an opportunity as he goes too wide across the timing line. They've got another 5 minutes or so to go, and what can Murphy do here other than try to get the switch back here into turn 1? And the answer is he can't even do that, because Raven knows what's coming, and in the end just parks the car on apex and says, what are you going to do about it? And I think Murphy's saying at this point, nothing at the moment, but just you wait. Speaking of waiting, well, Francesco Cordulo couldn't wait any longer to pass Mav Gardner, so much so he goes a bit wide, and the Passione course driver escorts himself off the road, and Gardner takes the place back. Ivan Falcone now catches up here, and keep in mind that Cordulo is an AM driver, sandwiched in amongst two pro drivers. But with all that happening, don't forget we've got a lead battle going on between our two top pros. Here's Petalin still holding off Davidson. Tom Davidson still attacking him as Kieran Sharp and Alessandro Dalladone. They've swapped back, with Sharp back ahead, and right now holding on to the final podium position. As they make the way in towards Oak Tree Bend. The fighting has been absolutely superb thus far, and long may it continue, as we've had a bit of a moment, I believe, for Daniel Moffat, who's had a brief off track, but nothing too major has changed as a result of that, and I'm hearing the same for Felix Smoggy. I think drivers just abusing the track limit, and they will be picking up some instant points for that, albeit this shorter race, the instant point count has not been adjusted, and therefore they can get away with off tracks a little bit more, unless they pick up an automated slowdown for their misdemeanours, but hopefully they don't do that. As we do continue to watch the battle for third between the number 23 of Sharp and 61 of Dalladone. Two very different cars here in terms of how they make their lap time, but that McLaren right now, Sharp, you can definitely see what he's doing with it is he's maximising the corners and hoping he can get a good enough exit to keep him safe from the BMW on the straight. And well, the absolutely egregious grilled G82 generation M4 of the BMW behind him right now will constantly be looming large in his mirrors, but I don't think he'll be too worried about that. Hold up a second, that's Passione course for Mustang parked in the grass. That is Cardulio, and how on earth did he get there? Here's a quick replay. So this with Cardulo making his way out of turn 15 and into 16 with Ivan Falcon behind. Gets him on the apex curve there at 16. Oh my good lord! And Cardulo in the end becomes a passenger in his car, straight to the barrier and back to live race to become. But there's the aftermath. Toes to the pits. He's going nowhere fast now, and that is a big shunt, and that puts him out of this race. Even with the fast repair, I can imagine if he does get back out there, it's just to be back on the grid and be towards the very back come at the finish line. But as we come back to live racing, here's your top two again. 2 tenths between them. We look from the gantry to the rear of Pettelin's 992. And as we can see, the BMW right now continue to push away. That Mercedes is looking so dangerous behind him. And that's the thing with Tom Davidson. When he gets close to you, he doesn't let it go. And therefore, for Pettelin right now, it's really all about a bit of mental conditioning between the drivers. Now, what do we mean by that exactly? Well, what you've got to think about here, this is a game of racing whereby it's all about putting pressure on one another. Pettelin here, weaving down the back straight, trying to break the distant toe. Meanwhile, you see Davidson, they're not really reacting too much to it, just very gentle steering inputs. Pettelin wants to try and break the slipstream to prevent that Mercedes getting any closer, because you can see this BMW does have a little bit of a straight line speed advantage. However, it's in the corners where Davidson's able to close up, better on the brakes and with the rearward rotation. But by looking left and looking right at certain corners, what Davidson can then do to Pettelin is he can start to make him psych himself out, wondering when Davidson's going to go for the move, as that's the car off the road there, and I believe that's the car of Alan McCain that's just tried to rejoin, albeit it's had to stay off the road with the leaders coming through. Alan McCain is not having a happy day at the office, but the point being right now that Davidson really trying to throw everything at this, and Pettelin withstanding the pressure for now, but for how long? Meanwhile, the fight for sixth carries on. This is Felix Schmoggy, Matt Cheverton and Marlon Schwab. Cheverton's in the middle, and right now all over the back of Smoggy coming into the braking zone for turn number 1. There comes Schwab looking around the outside. Cheverton goes to the switchback. It's a good move. Contact there between the two of them. That forces Felix Schmoggy out very wide, and there comes Marlon Schwab looking to seize the opportunity. Cheverton there getting a little bit aggressive, I think trying to ascertain the plays. But Schwab here right now just trying to go all the way around the outside. It's not enough, and the 364 Porsche has to wait another time. It was a good effort, however. He really does enjoy that outside line. He's got the grip fully under his fingertips in that Porsche, but the problem is those Ford Mustangs are just able to put their power down very happily. You see Schwab there flashing his lights. That's not because he's angry at the Ford Mustang in front of him. He's just trying to distract Felix Schmoggy as they make the way up the hill and trying to get him to make a mistake. But Schmoggy right now doesn't make errors, and you can definitely tell that if you can go 4 wide around the outside of 3 drivers at turn number 1 on the open lap, well, he's definitely a driver who is extremely talented, and he's proven that already today as we are on to what will be potentially our final lap of racing with only 30 seconds left on the clock. Ivan Falcon and Mav Garner, they're still fighting each other for 11th place overall, 9th in Pro Class, as they queue up behind the AM leaders of Petretti and Moffat, who are getting closer and closer. As they come onto the back straight, here are your leaders. And we're going to stay with them here because this might be the checkered flag lap. But Francesco Pettelin right now only 15 seconds away from the finish. And Tom Davidson is half a second back. He's fallen back a little bit over this last lap. As he comes down in towards the final couple of corners, the clock strikes 15 minutes, so therefore we are done in terms of time. But what's it going to be here for Pettelin? Will he see the checkered flag at the end of the road? And we roars wound down, weaving from side to side. Here's the finish line, and for Francesco Pettelin, it eluded him at Alton Park. It was not there at Mugello, but here at VAR, the absolute motorsport ace driver takes his first win of the season ahead of Tom Davidson and Kieran Sharp. The 2 TSRC drivers follow behind. Alessandro Dalladone takes 4th ahead of Craig Dardock, who put on a lightning start. Matt Cheverton finishes in 6th ahead of Felix Schmoggy and Marlon Schwab. And in the AM class, it's 4 attempts in the favour of Valerio Petretti, who takes the win for the Italian job ahead of Daniel Moffat, who takes the run-up spot. Mav Garner finishes 11th overall and 9th in Pro ahead of Ivan Falcon. And then Mark Davenport completes your top 3 in AM with 13th place finish overall ahead of Bart Raven and Craig Murphy, who rounds off your top 5 in the AM class there with brilliant drives from all 5 of those drivers. Clive Bourne in the end held off Lenny Hansen with Paul Sims, not quite able to chase them down, but he was ahead of Martin Brendel. And then we will have Palamaniti ahead of Valerio Tedeschi in their finishing order, 10th in AM, and Tedeschi was 11th in class. Martin Blankensteiner takes a consolatory 22nd place overall ahead of Andrew Pike. who's still struggling his way to the finish. The Sim Racing Collective Esports driver coming off the worst of many at the start of the race, being one of the two drivers who was escorted onto the grass, Martin Rendell being the other, and he makes his way out the final corner. Give them all a round of applause, ladies and gentlemen, in the fact they all deserve it, making it to the finish, even when they've had a nightmare start to the race. And here comes Pike then to complete his finish, as we do say hello there to numbers 746, who says, rest in peace, Fish, with regards to Andrew Pike's race at the very start. And we also say hello there to Shroom1, who is cheering on Tom. I believe that might be Tom Davidson. As we also do see Francesco Cordulo there finish, not where he thought he'd finished today. And then Nick Clemens will be your last lead lap finisher here, all the way down in 25th place. Alan McCain finishing a lap down in 26th, and Sam Smith and Luke Smith not making it to the grid due to technical issues with their cars. So we had 26 starters, and in the end, we are going to have a grand total of 26 finishers. But that was race number 1, ladies and gentlemen. We have got another race coming up very shortly. But what makes this a good time to do is take a look at the finishing positions for all drivers. And here are those provisional race results from our first of our 2 sprint races here today at the Virginia International Raceway. And as we can see, after 15 minutes of fast and furious racing action, Francesco Petrolin took the win for Absolute Motorsport Acelift. He did the hard work, no doubt about it. And after a brilliant pole lap, converted it into victory, but not without continuous pressure from Tom Davidson, with the Sim Racing Collective Esports driver leading home a second and third ahead of teammate Kieran Sharp. Sharp in the end withstood the test of the pressure that was put on him by Alessandro Dalladone, the Italian job driver taking 4th ahead of MSA Racing's Craig Tardock. That was your top 5, and then behind the Welshman was none other than Matt Cheverton, who took 6th there in the 390 for Aztec Racing after a brilliant freeway battle between himself, Cracked Racing's Felix Smoggy, and Marlin Schwab for DLR FP1. The two German drivers there were only separated by 2 tenths at the close, but they were comfortably 5 seconds clear of none other than Valerio Petretti, who for the Italian job won't be too upset about that because he was your AM winner, and that's the thing he was very keen to achieve here, and he's done it immediately. Daniel Moffat, well, a race winner once already, not quite a race winner here today, but so far a 2nd place going into the next race, and he'll take 10th place on the grid for the privateer outfit. And then we do have Mav Garnett, who took best rest in 11th there for the TSRC Esports team, ahead of Ivan Falcone for the Italian job. It was then a further second back to your 3rd place finisher in AM, Mark Davenport for Manx Racing, who was perhaps hoping for a little bit more, but to be fair, given he came all the way through the field to that 13th place finish, I think he'll be very happy with that. Ahead of Mark Braven's Cracked Racing Machine, the Dutchman there taking 4th in the AM class, 14th on the finishing order, and then we did see completing your top 15, what was the number 49 of Craig Murphy for Manx Racing, with an absolutely stellar effort. We then saw Clive Bourne take 16th for Big Pig Racing by VRS, 4 seconds ahead of Bottle Job Racing's Laney Hansen, with then being a further half a second back to Paul Sims, and round off your top 20 where it was the combination of Martin Rendell and Paolo Maniti. Valerio Tedeschi took 21st place in the end behind his fellow countryman Maniti, but ahead of Martin Blankensteiner, with the Danishman in the end having to struggle for Cracked Racing, and 22nd was the best he could achieve. Andrew Pike was 23rd after the open lap instant for TSRC Esports. And then we did see Francesco Cordulo and Nick Clemens round off your lead lap finishers. There's a lap down to Alan McCain, and the iRacing Esports driver then being followed up by your non-starters of Sam Smith for iRacing Esports and FD Racing's Luke Smith. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's how they all finished in our first race, and very shortly we will be getting set for our 2nd race of the day. Indeed, it is another sprint race coming up shortly, and we will be going to 25 minutes of racing. And as we do, of course, well, the important factor about it is we will have our grid set based on the finishing positions of race number 1. So it's not going to be too much different from how they finished, and the racing will continue exactly from where they left off from the first race of the day, as the circuit right now is relatively empty here in regards to drivers, but that's because the warm-up session is coming to a close. You know what time it is then, ladies and gentlemen? It's time to head to the grid for our 2nd race here at VIR. And as our drivers make their way onto the grid for the 2nd and final time today, they line up as follows. Francesco Petrolin continues from where he left off in race number 1 with a victory and is looking to go for perfection today for Absolute Motorsport Acelift. A pole and a win. Can he make it 2 wins out of 2 and score the lion's share of the points? If not, Tom Davidson will be very eager to try and swipe it away from him, starting alongside on the front row for Sim Racing Collective Esports. On row at number 3, we have Kieran Sharp for TSRC, and he's in the company of Alessandro Dalladone for the Italian job. They're back together once again. Craig Tardock, one of the fastest starters on the running order, for MSA Racing, and very smart with where he positioned the car. Well, he started in 10th place in race number 1. He's already halved the gap to the front of the field. On that logic, he should win this one for MSA Racing, but it's easier said than done. Matt Sheraton as well showed ferocious pace under fighting to move into 6th place at Aztec Racing. Can he fight his way onto the podium? If not, he'll have the company of the 2 German drivers behind him, who he enjoyed the company of in race number 1, of Felix Smoggy for Cracked Racing and DLR FP1's Marlon Schwab, and they'll be very eager to get retribution on him. In 9th place is your AM pole sitter and winner of race number 1 in the AM class, Valerio Petretti, I should say, for the Italian job. The Italian driver being followed up by the Briton of Daniel Moffat, who was hot on his heels all the way through the first race, but couldn't find a way in. Can he find a better way in this time? Then, round from the top 10 to 11th, it's Mav Garner for the Sim Racing Collective Esports, joined on the 6th row of the grid by Ivan Falcone. The Italian job driver then being followed up by none other than, in 13th place, Mark Davenport for Manx Racing, and the Isle of Man driver there being also joined by the Dutchman of Bart Raven for Cracked Racing, already relishing his arrival in the AM class. Craig Murphy, he halved the delta to his teammate at Davenport. He starts just behind him on the grid in 15th place for Manx Racing, but ahead of Clive Bourne for Big Pig Racing by VRS. Then we have Lenny Hansen starting 17th in this one for Bottle Job Racing, but he's going to be in the firm company of Paul Sims, who kept him honest in race number 1. And the privateer will give way to 2 other privateers on the 10th row of the grid to complete your top 20 of Martin Rendell, the pole sitter from race number 1, who was ejected to the grass coming into turn number 2. Can he recover his way through the order in this one? We will see. And Palamaniti will join him for company there in 20th place. Valerio Tedeschi starts 21st ahead of Martin Blankensteiner, with the Cracked Racing driver hoping for a much smoother start to this one. And the same for Andrew Pike there, who starts 23rd for the Sim Racing Collective Esports, knowing that his starting position is not commensurate with the pace he's brought to the table. Francesco Cordulo starts 24th, Passione course, another driver who struggled in qualifying and in race number 1. Can he turn the struggles around? Because if not, on the 13th row of the grid, he'll have Nick Clibbins for Iris Esports and teammate to Clibbins of Alan McCain for Close Company. And then on that final row of the grid, should they be able to join it, will be Sam Smith for Iris Esports and Luke Smith for FD Racing. However, given their absences in race number 1, it's very likely we may not be seeing them in race number 2 either, and that's a shame, but that's the way it goes sometimes in motorsport. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, all of our grid is set, and all our drivers right now started to get themselves underway. It's been a little bit of a longer sit on the grid for this one, but we will have our full formation lap about to start, and it will be behind the BMW M2 CS Racing safety car that we do see Francesco Petalin make the field, get the way out of the pit lane, onto the tarmac, and they will take their time over the 3.27 mile length of the circuit to warm up those tyres, get the brakes warmed up as well, and go green flag racing. Now, entering a bit more different territory here for the drivers. They've already had one 15-minute race, and they've got a feel now for what it's like to be full attack and not having to think about a pit stop. It's going to be the same here, albeit an extra 10 minutes has been added onto this race. It's a 25-minute race, and that adds up to complete your total 40 minutes that you would see in our classic feature race round. But what goes through the mind of a driver who's just won the first race of the day and now has to do it all over again from the same starting position? Well, the theory should be it's just as easy. However, it wasn't easy for Petalin in race number 1, with Davidson staying with him and never falling more than 6 tenths behind over the entire race distance. So Petalin's got to work out how does he best start this race and how does he potentially outfox Davidson and get him to fall backwards to the drivers behind. Because he's able to force Davidson to fall into the clutches of the rest of the field, he may just be able to make a break for it. Davidson will be aware of that, and he will be looking to time his start to perfection, as Kieran Sharp, who starts right behind him, his teammate, would like to try and get ahead, but Alessandro Donadoni may have other ideas. Further down the order, of course, you do have the 2 AM drivers, first and second in class, 9th and 10th on this grid. Valerio Petretti and Daniel Moffat very close together, and they have been 2 of the big stars of the AM class so far this season, with, of course, Moffat really impressing at what was Alton Park, with Petretti looking quick, albeit some minor errors costing him what could have been a chance at the class win, but he has put a class win on the board so far, but he will want the 2 wins if he wants to pick up the same points as Moffat did earlier on in the season. But they're going to be very quick together, and they will be reliant on watching what happens to the cars in front of them for going green flag racing. But as we said in the rundown of the grid, we have plenty of drivers who are well out of position, including none other than Martin Rendell and Paul Sims. Paul Sims here we do look at in the black 918 BMW M4, and you do see Rendell behind him there in the 33 Porsche Cayman. 2 very quick drivers, particularly Rendell, your pole sitter in qualifying. The fact that he's all the way down here in 19th place, now with a fully repaired car, you have to imagine if he can get a good start, he may be picking his way through the field. Oh, goodness me, as that's Valerio Tedeschi almost hitting the rear of Rendell as the field starts to come together. Thankfully, he was able to avoid that rearward contact, but Tedeschi there just being caught out of the field concertina as they make the way down the backstretch. Indeed, the field drops its pace a little bit here as they are now required to make the way into the double file formation and hold it all the way to the start line on the back straight. They're not given as much luxury as other circuits where they can go single file, potentially all the way to what is the final couple of corners. Indeed, their mandate on that back straight to go into the 2x2 formation, like Noah's Ark. And well, we've also got to consider Alan McCain right at the back of the starting order in 26th place. What can he do from there, given the fact he never really got a chance to show what he could do in race number 1? He'll be looking to impress as quickly as he can alongside teammate Nick Clibbins. So there's plenty of stories to unfold here, but as the field now makes its way down into Hogpen Corner, well, it's that time again, ladies and gentlemen. Race number 2 of round 3 is about to get underway, and it's the Francesco Petzlin to take us to green flag racing once again here at VIR for round number 3 of the championship. And it's lights on, away we go here for the second time today as Petzlin goes a little bit sooner this time and it catches Davidson out. But look at that from Dalladone, immediately on the mission here to try and attack. He's going to look round the outside. Davidson goes to fence in the middle of the road. All Petzlin has to do is sit there. Kieran Sharp, meanwhile, he absolutely tucks it up the inside. They all go a bit deep. Bit of contact there from Felix Schwoggy to the back of Sharp, trying to look for a wound in. But it's a much cleaner start to this race this time around for the mid-pack as they all come into NASCAR Bend. Well, a couple of cars there getting very close for comfort, but everybody has survived the opening couple of corners. Felix Schwoggy has run very wide there, as you can see in the distance, and they're the lovely light blue Aqua Ford Mustang. When it is going to keep Craig Twardock at bay. Oh, goodness me, Kieran Sharp goes on around, and with it there, Craig Twardock escorts him off the road, but Sharp goes to rejoin, but has to wait now until the whole field makes his way past, and Sharp in. I'm not sure if it was cold tyres, a mistake, but make no mistake, that's Marlon Schwab into the barrier, and we've also got Mercedes there crawling along. Who's that crawling? I believe that's Mark Davenport who's been involved again, and the Manx Racing driver's not going to believe his luck as Marlon Schwab. Meanwhile, there's a huge chance to the barrier there coming through the snake, and that snake is absolutely bitten it. It's a venomous corner, and the proof is in the pudding. But we'll understand what exactly has happened in due course. Meanwhile, at the front of the field, where he timed the start absolutely perfectly, and Francesco Petzlin right now is bolting away. He's a second clear, but the problem is he's got a long back stretch with which to try and open that gap back up. But if he can, he might be safe from Davidson and Dalladone, who are right now separated by 9/10 apiece. Then we have Matt Cheverton currently in fourth place, with Felix Schwoggy right behind him, and your AM leader, Valerio Petretti, is all the way up into 6th with all the drama that's played out. There he is in the rear of your picture. But look at this, Craig Twardock, they're taking a quick look versus Mav Gardner. How on earth has Mav Gardner got that up into 7th place? That's a brilliant start for Gardner, who started in 11th. Twardock is missing a front bumper, it should be pointed out, in his BMW M4. And the MSA racing driver right now, we're wondering where that bumper's gone, as Dan Ladonna picks up a slowdown off camera, and he'll surf that as quickly as he can. Because all these drivers come towards the end of an open lap, Twardock does not tuck to the pit lane, he decides to carry on. So one lap is down, plenty more to come over 25 minutes. It's Petzlin ahead of Davidson. Your top two now starting a breakaway as Dalladone sits in third, still to burn that slow down, but he goes very deep there into turn one intentionally. Then we see Matt Cheverton sitting in fourth ahead of Felix Schwoggy, followed by Valerio Petretti. Then it's getting very close. Ivan Falcone has had a lightning start as well. The Italian driver moves up the order. Daniel Moffat escorts himself off the road, and Moffat there drops down to third place in AM. It could be even more worry here. As you can see there, Nick Clemens trying to go around the outside. Clemens, who started all the way in 25th, getting very interested in making places in the dinosaur machine for iRacing Esports, but he can't quite find it at the moment as he tucks back in. There's more fighting going on a bit further behind as Francesco Crudulo trying to fight with Martin Rendell here. The Passione course driver end up in the grass at turn number 16 in the opening race after hitting the apex curve way too high. Finds his way back ahead of Rendell there at critical time as they come through turns 5 and 5A. And the snake there goes the way of Crudulo, at least for now, as we then come back to Moffat versus Pike. Too wide coming up through the S's. This is not the faint-hearted as Moffat in the end runs out of road, and he has to relinquish the place as Nick Clemens tucks the behind, and Bart Raven almost clips the rear of the Porsche for good measure. Lenny Hansen still there with them. Right now the fighting has absolutely been turned up to a maximum here compared to race number one, and we'll keep in mind we've still got 22 minutes plus a checker flag lap to go. We have got a lot of races still to come here, and right now I think all of our drivers are not mindful of the fact that these tyres, you can push them hard, but they have a finite limit. It's normally 20 minutes of flat out running, which is their limit. As meanwhile, Alan McCain and Kieran Sharp are sharing a little bit of real estate on screen, with the iRacing Esports Mercedes of McCain right now trying to outpace the McLaren from TSRC as Sharp. It's Sharp on the right, meanwhile McCain on the left. The same here for Cadulo and Sims in front. That's going to be Cadulo getting ahead of Sims into the corkscrew. And meanwhile Sharp does the same versus McCain as Martin Rendell tucks in behind. And right now the outplays Am driver wants to pick his way past these two pros and go a little bit further into the running order. But speaking of the running, we need to understand exactly what happened at the start of this race between several drivers, and here's a replay to explain. So it was a much smoother start for so many drivers here at the beginning, but the big question mark we have is what exactly happened to Marlon Schwab. Now you'll remember he started on the fourth row of the grid. The racing got underway, and well, we'll see it from his perspective on the third-person cameras. So under braking, well, good bit of defensive work there from Pettin to force Davison to queue the cars up. Kieran Sharp there somehow get it to the inside and get it stopped in time, but then had to back off, having taken so much apex curve, he didn't have any grip available to him. Now as the field then made its way down to turn number 2, Schwab there flashing his lights, trying to get ahead of Cheverton. Cheverton once again using the bulk of his Mustang to his advantage. But you can see there Schwab having behind him Petretti, who had a monster start for the Italian job team, and they made all those places, but this is where it potentially went wrong. And they made the way through. So Sharp went on the round, the MSA Racing car Twardot making its way into Sharp, then Schwab came through the corner, got the power down, took a lot of curb, and the car came loose there as a result. And then in the rear of the picture, that was a stage left ejection there for none other than what was Mark Davenport. So Schwab got it wrong, took too much curb at the snake. What exactly happened to Davenport? Here's the explanation for that. Well, this was a little bit later. In fact, we do apologise. This was Davenport losing it at Oak Tree Corner. But before that, he also had a bit of misery. And this is what happened to Davenport before that. And this was coming through the corners and got it wrong there by looks of things. And in a similar instance, Marlon Schwab just took too much curb, and the rear of that Mercedes let him go. And that explains all the big moments there from the start of the race. As we come back to a Martin Rendell, who's dropped all the way to 24th place as a result of an incident. We haven't quite got the story there. We'll try and get a replay of that a bit later. But let's come back to some battle in action, because we've still got plenty of race distance to cover here. And all the drivers right now seem to be settling in for the longer haul. Lenny Hansen in 5th place right now in the AM class. He's had a really good start to this race. From 10th on the grid in class, and got 17th overall, up to 15th overall, and 5th in class. He can't be complaining. He can't be complaining at that. And the fact that he has moved ahead of several drivers. Francesco Cadulo is right behind him, and we can see right behind them it's Kieran Sharp versus Paul Sims. And Sharp looking to pick up another place here on a set of tyres on that McLaren that have definitely been well past their prime before they even completed a lap with that big slide. But as the number 23 driver continues to pick his way through, well, indeed he's one of a very limited number of McLarens. He's the only McLaren on the running grid today. Right now, Kieran Sharp, he may be the unique car on the grid, he may be the unicorn, but my goodness, is he going to make us all stare at him with regards to what is a very strong drive. But as he continues to make his way up the order, we then come to Daniel Moffat, who right now finds himself between a rock and a hard place. He's got Craig Murphy in front of him, the second place AM driver, but behind, he's got a very hungry Nick Clivins, and that's not because he's bearing his dinosaur teeth here as we jump aboard with Clivins, but the point is, Clivins has come all the way from the very back row of the grid to 13th, and he's not done yet. He's 10th place in the Pro Class right now, but the number 13 driver here fancies an opportunity to go even further forward. As he heads in towards the right-hander of Oak Tree Bend, well, right now the iRacing Esports driver riding the rear of his rival, coming out of the corner. Well, they're staying nice and close, but he's not quite able to make the move this time. Understandably, I think his thought process at this time will be he's got to get so close to the back of that BMW that he can practically reach out and touch its rear wing, because otherwise, on these straights, as we can see, the BMW is the faster car, and the Porsche will not be able to gain even in the tow, adding to the fact, of course, that Moffat does have the tow of the Porsche Craig Murphy in front of him. But this is where things completely change under braking. This is where the Porsche cars are able to beat the BMW at its own game. Down in towards turn 16 and 17. Right now, these drivers so close together, but this goes to show the fact that they're all so used to racing each other, and it's great racing respect. And Clemens right now, he just needs that extra 2% to try and find a move. He thinks he's got it here, but the thing is, as soon as he gets to top gear, you can see now that BMW just starts to pull away. He's going to pull over to the right hand. In fact, Daniel Moffat lets it go. Well, that's interesting. Now that, I think, is a smart move there from Moffat. I think he was worried about the building pressure and decided it's not worth it. But meanwhile, Francesco Cadulo looking for the move on Lenny Hansen. He's going to get it here, potentially. Hansen goes deep. Cadulo has a little bit of space there on the exit of turn 1. He'll put him on the outside into NASCAR Bend. He doesn't find it, and he turns in to find a McLaren sat right alongside him, makes contact, and somehow, some way, he managed to keep it pointed in a straight line, but not without losing the place there to Paul Sims and Alan McCain. again. But my goodness, that could have been a nightmare moment, but in the end it wasn't. Well done to both Sharp and Cadulo, and both drivers will have their interpretation of what happened there. I think Cadulo would argue that as he went to turn on in, that Kieran Sharp dived into the space. I think Sharp would argue, well, there was a space there, I put my car there, and Cadulo didn't see me coming. Well, either way, they might have a chat with each other after the race about that one, but I suspect that might be classified as a racing incident, given the fact it all worked out in the end. But from then, we come back to the very front of the field. And with your two leaders right now, they are 5 seconds clear of the rest of the grid. And we can see that Petterlin is keeping Tom Davidson at bay. This really does feel as though a bit of a deja vu from race number 1. And, well, they're just coming up to the point now where they've got 16 minutes left to go. So the race has really started between them, and it's going to run over the same distance which they battled for the entirety of race number 1. However, the tyre life question is going to be a little bit more significant here to come down through Hogpen, both clattering the apex curves, and Davidson is on a mission here to really milk the pressure as much as he can. We ride on board, looking down over the front of the 42 for TSRC, and you see there the speed he's carrying down that straight, 240 kilometres out and going onwards. And he's looking up the inside here for the move. Petterlin steps aside, and well, he doesn't decide to fight it this time. And I think for Francesco Petterlin, he would rather work with Davidson and give himself an opportunity just to protect the car a little bit more. Well, if that is the situation he's going for, the only problem is he's now unleashed Davidson onto the weld. The theory for qualifying would be that Petterlin will be able to stay with him. However, I wonder whether Davidson, between qualifying and race number 1, has found out where he lost the time, and therefore is now going to try and make amends and bolt away. Craig Tardot, meanwhile, is not being bolted out of 7th place in Pro, or 8th overall, with Mav Gardner and Andrew Pike for close company right behind him. Pike right now riding the man like a bad rash as they make their way out of turn number 5 and in towards 6 and 7. And the TSRC at number 57 right now, having come all the way from 25th or 23rd on this grid, I should say. Well, right now he's trying to go even further. He's well inside the top 10 of the pros, but can he get into the top 5? He's going to clear all the drivers in front of him initially, then find his way past the AM leader of Petretti, and then Felix Smoggy will be the final target. It's not that easy, however, and we have seen just how challenging it is to make overtakes, even in these road racing turned race cars. As Mike there dives up the inside of Mav Gardner, his teammate, albeit they're good friends off the circuit and good rivals on the circuit. And in the end, Mike will make that move, but not without Gardner now looking for an opportunity to come back at him. But will it be peaceful, or will it be all-out war here as they head up the hill? And something tells me it might be peaceful, because for Mav Gardner, he's not peeling to the inside, and he's just following that racing line that Andrew Pike is dictating. He pulls out slightly here, but I suspect this is more to bleed, where it's a bit of overspeed and also sight the corner. And Mav Gardner does exactly that. So that way he now is braking zone into turns 14 and 15 and doesn't have to worry about rear-ending his teammate. Because the last thing you want to do in motorsport is make contact, none more so than with your own teammates. It doesn't go down well with the sponsors and all the team managers and principals and everybody else in between. But what is going down well right now is the fact that Ivan Falcone is still delivering a very solid race here. Currently 6th in Pro with Craig Twaddock for close company. But credit where it's due to the Italian top driver here. He is not giving in under what is a lot of pressure. Twaddock looking around the outside. They rub doors. Oh, goodness me. Twaddock there. He really wanted that in the MSA racing car. And Falcone said, I'm not giving it up to you. And you can see what he was trying to do was essentially outbrake Falcone to the apex and then squeeze and cut off Falcone's nose. But Ivan Falcone saw that coming and said, right, you know what, if you're going to turn into the corner, I'm going to take my time through the corner as well. I'm not going to be bullied to ride the apex curve. So Craig Tardot right now really getting his boxing gloves out there. It's all fair, this racing, to be fair, so long as they're not knocking each other off the road, but he's getting a bit rough between them. And given the fact that Tardot's already got some damage on the front of the car, he's got to be careful, because if he picks up any more, it could start to really compromise the performance of the car beyond the additional aerodynamic drag he's currently experiencing, which has cost him about 2 to 3 miles down in the toe down the straight. But as he keeps it clean, right now these drivers all pushing each other onwards, and that's also a little bit of temperament building here. Remembering the fact, of course, they've got time but not that long, and I think that's something that drivers are adjusted to, is the fact that with these shorter races, you've got to get the work done at a circuit where overtaking is challenging, but absolutely entertaining when they do try to do it. And well, onto the back straight they go, and Twaddock this time 3.5 tenths back from Falcone, who is taking a little bit of a look there to see how much closer he can get to Petretti. He's not really close enough to think about it, as Pike and Gardner are all queuing up behind. But looking a bit further behind, Bart Raven and Kieran Sharp, they're still together. And Raven right now, the 4th place AM driver, he would love to move into 3rd in the AM class to Daniel Moffat, but Moffat is 2 seconds up the road, so it's a bigger gap than it has been more recently, and understandably that right now for Bart Raven this is all about just doing things right. As hold up a second, that's Alan McCain somehow cutting his way through the field. I don't know how he managed to avoid clipping all those AB drivers, but somehow he did. We're going to have to get a replay of that shortly. That's not normal, as that's not normal at all, as that's the number 7, Lenny Hansen, sliding on the grass, and with him is the Ford Mustang of Clive Bourne. Bourne's got a collapsed front left suspension. They've come to blows, these two. Bourne's trying to pull it into the pit. It's literally just there, the pit entry line. Can he make it? I think he can. We've also got there the Mercedes of Alan McCain coming on in. It's been a dramatic end to this lap, and well, goodness me, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to need to try and unpick that. But what exactly has happened to cause all this madness, we will see very shortly. As here's Paolo Maniti making his way onwards in the Privateer 72. And my good lord, that could have been very hairy. We could have had multiple cars in the pit lane there for major damage, but we didn't in the end. But what exactly caused it all? We begin then with what happened to Alan McCain, and here's a replay. So this was McCain making his way up towards 14 and 15, under braking there, went in very tight, missed his braking point entirely, and went straight onto the tyre barrier, and somehow managed to put himself right between all the drivers around him. We need an on-board of that, because what exactly went wrong in the car? Let's listen in. This is the on-board of Alan McCain. Ooh, goodness me. And well, in the end, got it wrong under braking there behind Lenny Hansen. McCain had too much speed, and as they went into the braking zone, I think he expected Hansen not to brake until about half a second later. McCain was getting the car ready to scythe up the inside into 14, but Hansen on the brakes, and McCain in the end had no reaction time there whatsoever and just hit the rear of his rival. We then had this for Lenny Hansen only moments later in an already damaged car as they came down through 15. Car damage came across that. I think that's the damage collecting the car. And unfortunately for him, Francesco Cordula and himself coming together, and then that put him on a collision course with Clive Bourne. It was just an innocent bystander in all of that, and this was the on-board from Bourne's perspective. Coming on down here, he's going to see Cordulo, and also what is there, Hansen coming together, tries to go around the outside of it, and Hansen just rolls across the road. He's got no ability to stop the car at that point, no matter how much he holds the brakes, and Clive Bourne in the end just in the wrong place at the right time to become a tertiary casualty. But back to your live race to become then an absolutely nasty moment for so many drivers, but it could have been far, far worse between all of our field coming down through the road into Hogpen Corner. But back with your live race, and it was still 10 minutes plus the final lap left on the clock. Davidson, Petelin, they are your top two, and they're on screen still, with Tom Davidson having taken the lead of this race at the halfway point, and Francesco Petelin giving in to let the lead go. And as he makes his way onwards, well, right now it does seem as though, well, it's all about the chase, it's all about the pursuit, but nothing is changing at the moment. It does seem as though Davidson just holding his ground, and the TSRC driver here looking quite confident in that position. Petelin there, keeping him honest every step of the way. This might be all about the mind games here. Perhaps Petelin is calming himself down and looking to go on the counter-attack towards the very end of the race. Albeit, you have to imagine, perhaps he prefers to be the hunter rather than the hunted. But Tom Davidson, you give him an inch, he will take a mile, and he will never give it back. Speaking of going back, however, we come back to Ivan Falcone, Pike and Twaddock. Also Mav Garner there with them. Those four all pro drives together with your AM leader Valerio Petretti right behind. And well, Petretti has had a bit of an off-track quite recently, and well, that has enabled them to come through. In fact, I think that off-track was much earlier on in the race now, as I'm rereading all of our data logs, and I believe Petretti has just opted to let all these AM drivers go. And I believe in doing so, well, he's bought himself some clear track. The only problem is, he has brought himself the pressure of Nick Clibbins behind, with the little cheeky iRacing dinosaur Porsche right now really trying to go on the attack. What he has also brought with him is only a 2-second gap now to Max Racer's Craig Murphy, the second of our AM drivers, and the one who right now is proving to be the fastest of your AM drivers in the running order. So therefore, in theory, let's take a look at the lap times this time around for Petretti. The lap he's just been able to set was as it comes on in, a 1 minute 57, as Petretti has just given way to Nick Clibbins, lets it go for Craig Murphy, a 1 minute 54. So Murphy is on a mission here, and he is now only 2 seconds away from completing that mission, albeit his mission now is going to end up on a side quest, because he will now have to deal with Kieran Sharp, who wants to take the place. And Sharp is not going to make it easy for himself. He's going to go around the outside of NASCAR bend, all the dirt and dust there on the road not helping at all, but Kieran Sharp absolutely throws himself at it. Into left hook corner they go. Murphy is still there, but Kieran Sharp in the end going all the way around the outside, and when he gets it absolutely nailed, albeit almost taking it off the road there at turn number 5. Somehow Kieran Sharp uses all the road, nothing more, nothing less. Indeed, right now if you could have got your ruler out there, he would have been millimetre perfect, and Kieran Sharp is up into a length there with some very deft manoeuvring. But these drivers, they all continue to push each other. And indeed, even though we're going deeper and deeper into the race, there is no change with regards to what is the pace of our drivers. They're all hustling. But we have had a big incident for Craig Twardock on this lap. And in fact, he's had to tow to the pits. We will come to that incident shortly, because here we come back to our leaders. And Petelin, that time, was only 1.5 tenths away into the braking zone there for turn 14. He is starting to get a little bit eager, as there's also some eagerness building here for Andrew Pike. He's looking around the outside. He wants the inside of the corkscrew, but the problem is Ivan Falco knows it and puts the car right in the middle of the road. Pike's going to try and go all the way in then, but Falco just beats him into the braking zone there, uses the better brakes of that Mercedes at this point in the race to be able to fend off the intentions of Andrew Pike. As back in time we go to the beginning of lap number 10, and this is what happened to Craig Twardock, who was in this fight earlier on. So into NASCAR bend they went, Twardock on the outside, went onto the grass there, and once you got onto the grass, it's so hard to get it stopped, and straight into the barrier there. My goodness, the MSA Racing driver, collapsed suspension, smoke coming out the engine. That was his race, unfortunately, and for Craig Twardock, just a little tiptoe onto the grass, and it's had major repercussions there, and it's so unfortunate for the MSA Racing driver, who was so impressive in race number 1, and even in race number 2, minus the front bumper, was still continuing to impress, but in the end, he's now going to have to redress the car ahead of our visit to our next round in a week's time, and that being none other, of course, than Circuit Zolder. But still, where he's lost out, others have gained, and Andrew Pike, Mav Garner and Nick Clippens are the biggest gainers of that situation, as everyone continues to push forward here. We've only got 5 minutes remaining. We continue to stay transfixed on the battle for 6th place in Pro between Falcon, Pike, Gardner and Clippens. And Nick Clippens, of course, coming all the way from 25th. Pike coming all the way from 23rd. They're the 2 biggest gainers on this grid, both in class and overall. And both putting on an absolutely brilliant display. I think they want a little bit more before all is said and done. They'd love to try and sneak their way to that 6th place spot, but Ivan Falcone is making himself nice and wide in his golden Mercedes. As they get themselves set for Oak Tree Bend. A bit further back, here is Daniel Moffat, who explores the track limits and takes a bit of a rallycross exit there, coming out of South Bend. And the Taco Bell machine right now, well, chasing after Craig Murphy. He's been doing that all race, really. And I can tell you one thing, Daniel Moffat, for all the pace he's bringing that BMW, Murphy today, he really has found some pace in this second race. Compared to the first one, the Isle of Man driver is really showing what that Porsche could do. Give it some clear track and give it a driver who's very willing to exploit its characteristics, and he's doing exactly that. But meanwhile, a bit of exploiting the inside line here, coming across that timeline. Francesco Pettini up the inside of Tom Davidson going into turn number 1. They go to lap number 12, and after this one, they'll have another 2 laps to go, potentially, depending on how tight the time goes. But we can see here, Pettini up the inside. Davidson looks for the cut back, can't quite find it. Or can he be right on board here? In fact, he is there, but it's on the outside of turn number 2. So Davidson here is going to have to either go around the outside, or he's going to have to back off and switch it back in. He goes to the latter. And Pettini there keeps a nice line into what is left hook bend. Davidson here, what could he choose to do now? We know both drivers are equal in terms of pace. Neither driver is able to break away from the other. 2 different machines. The Mercedes has got it on the brakes and in the lower speed corners. BMW, meanwhile, is a little bit stronger through the higher speed corners and on the extended straights, but it's got the better top end speed acceleration. So therefore you would imagine that right now Davidson, as the aggressor here, he's got to stay nice and close or get it done in the corners. Meanwhile, Pettini will prefer to hold the track position and be as slow as possible through the likes of Oak Tree Bend, and that way he can really force Davidson to have to play the game of follow the leader. Into the aforementioned hairpin they go, and that's very deep. Pettini goes wide. Davidson up the inside, and he'll take the place back or thereabouts. But Pettini now will tuck back in immediately here. It's not going to be a clear cut for Davidson because Pettini's already a 10th behind as they start to wind their way up towards top gear. So Pettini making a small error. Those brakes are burning hot. Those front tyres as well haven't got the grip anymore. And Davidson goes defensive here as Pettini try to look around the outside. A bit of a rub between the 2 of them. Keep it clean, gents. It's been brilliant racing. We don't want to see it end in tears. But battle on the brakes here. 2 wide into the corkscrew they come, down they roar, and Tom Davidson on the inside for now. He just about holds on as the absolute motorsport ace if BMW refuses to budge, but it's got to in. It's going to run out of road, and Pettini in the end settles to the position. He tucks back in. They've still got another 2 laps to go because we've got 2.5 minutes left on the clock, ladies and gentlemen. It's going to be about 2 minutes 10 when they cross that timeline. They will squeeze it in unless they have an absolutely hugely slow lap through fighting. But right now, Davidson and Pettini, place your bet. Who's going to take the win? Pettini, of course, took the win in race number 1 here today and pole position. He's going for the perfect score. Meanwhile, Tom Davidson's looking to strike back after missing out on the win in race number 1, but they have kept each other honest every step of the way here in the US state of Virginia, and right now it's going to come down to fine margins. Am leader, meanwhile, here's Valerio Petretti. He's battling side by side with Kieran Sharp and letting Sharp go by looks of things. He's still ahead of Craig Murphy. Murphy now 4.5 seconds behind, and is Rory Gross in the battle for what is second place in the AM class, with Daniel Moffat rather than chasing down the lead. I think Murphy at this point having to go defensive as much as possible, given that Moffat is really proving to be a forward his backside. Meanwhile, there's plenty of fighting going on ahead of the AM leaders, with Kieran Sharp at the inside of Mav Gardner there, who makes a complete ham sandwich of the run through NASCAR Bend. And as they come out to left hook and into the snake, Sharp now up into 9th place with Ivan Falcone, Nick Clements and Andrew Pike, his next target. But back to the front we come, and as we do, well, Oak Tree Bend this time, Davidson and Petalin, they are very differently positioned this time. It is Davidson who holds the lead into the corner, and he holds it on exit, but looking back from the rear, we're building up the speed here, and well, goodness me, I can't quite see entirely what that rear wing does say, but definitely right now, I think there's a bit of banter on the back of Tom Davidson's car. Put the banter aside for a moment, he's got to focus on what he can do here. Let's see, he gets closer, and closer, and closer, looks to the middle of the road here. Does he go for the dive up the inside? No, he thinks better of it. Davidson holds the inside line just in case as they come over the crest and down into turn number 15. So through that left they come into 16, 17 is next. Petalin there completely backs off. And then there's no way through at this point, and onwards then through Hog Pen Corner they go. 30 seconds left on the clock. We have got one more lap to go here at VIR. We ride on board with Francesco Petalin. He is the attacker. He is looking for a perfect score today. Tom Davidson, the man in front of him, is trying to spoil that for the Italian driver. And the absolute motorsport ace-lift driver has proven he can lead. He's proven he can overtake. He has proven he can battle. But can he prove himself one more time here? If not, Davidson right now will spoil the party down in the pit lane, and therefore will continue to lead the championship. And as they make the way through into NASCAR Bend, well, right now you'd have to imagine advantage. It's Davidson's Petalin. Their struggles, understeer creeps in, and that might be it. That might be the battle for the lead coming to a halt as quick as that, as Petalin just outbreaks himself by a minor margin. He'll try and catch it back up now. These tyres can recover very quickly, but that's the tyre degradation. It's just hit so hard, and well, you can see these tyres of these GT4s, they just do not last longer than 20 minutes of full attack, and that's why this 25-minute sprint race is so unique, because you have a 5-minute tyre window in which you need to manage. But meanwhile, fighting going on further behind. We'll keep an eye on the leaders, but right now it's getting absolute hammer and tongs here between Pike, Clemens and Sharp as they all fight each other absolutely like mad. Here comes Clemens, the Porsche, the plucky little Porsche that could, they say, and as he heads up the hill, well, Kieran Sharp right now goes too wide into the S's. Don't close your eyes, folks, you want to miss this as Kieran Sharp just sneaks ahead. My goodness, that's brave. Mav Gardner behind, he's watching this right now thinking, what on earth are they doing in front, and why am I not a part of it? As Valerio Petretti holding on to the lead of the AM class. He's got Craig Murphy 4 seconds behind, but Murphy right now has got a bigger issue, and that is Daniel Moffat 9 tenths and closing. But back to your lead as we come then, and well, it looks like the top 3 in AM may be settled. The top 5 in Pro may almost be settled, but right now for Davidson, he's got 2 more quarters of the sprint to go. He's got a very hungry BMW behind that's flashing its lights, trying to distract him as much as possible, but it's not going to happen because they come out the final corner. It may have been Petalin who led the way in race number 1, but for Tom Davidson, it's going to be a return to winning race here in race number 2 at VIR as the checker flag falls. The TSR Esports driver takes the win ahead of absolute motorsport aces Petalin, who finishes second. It's then a 10-second gap to Alessandro Dalladone, who makes it 2 Italians on the podium today ahead of Matt Cheverton, who finishes 4th just off the podium. Felix Moggi takes 5th place there for Cracked Racing, and then you will see Ivan Falcone with a season best performance there for the Italian job in 6th, having started 12th, ahead of Andrew Pike, Kieran Sharp, Nick Clemens and Mav Gardner. There is your winner in AM, Valerio Petretti. Take a bow, good sir, because that's back-to-back wins in AM class today. Well done to him. Ahead of Craig Murphy, who held off the intentions of Daniel Moffat for 2nd in AM, 12th overall, and behind the Manx Racing drive was Daniel Moffat, 3rd in the class there, with Bart Raven 4th. Once again in AM, ahead of Paul Sims, who round off your AM top 5 in 15th place. And then we will have Martin Blankensteiner just ahead of Francesco Cadulo, and then it will be Martin Rendell, who did some recovery work in this race, but nowhere near enough, and Indian had to settle for 18th, 7th in AM class, ahead of Lenny Hansen, with Valerio Tedeschi making his way up through very shortly, and well, the Privateers definitely had a tough day today, but a 9th place in AM in this race will give him some good points here to go into the second half of the season, and I don't think he's going to be too upset about that as he heads towards the timing line. It'll be then Clive Bourne, a further, 13 seconds seconds behind as Tedeschi takes his checker flag. And here comes Clive Bourne in the Big Pig Racing by VRS Ford Mustang. That definitely had a bit of a nightmare race compared to race number 1. But still, it's not about how you start, it's about how you finish. And he finishes it with the checker flag. And that will be it, ladies and gentlemen, for your lead lap finishers. As Alan McCain calls the car in down there on a lap. There is a lap down. He finished a lap off the winners. But still, the iRacing Esports driver here making it to the end and wanting to complete every lap he can turned on this circuit. Also there, Palamaniti, a lap down at the close, but well done to him for finishing the race in 23rd. And as all the drivers cool things on down, and you can see there, Alessandro Dalladone and Matt Cheverton exchanging some words, and indeed, I think very happy with their performances. Well, in fact, where is Cheverton? He's not there with them. My apologies. That's the 61 alongside, well, Dalladone is the 61, and alongside him is the other Italian job machine, and that is none other there than Ivan Falcone, and between them, Valerio Petretti, as the three teammates line up together there for a wonderful camera shot. And they are absolutely over the moon with their performances there. And, well, understandably, they'll be very pleased. But Valerio Petretti goes in the middle of the pair. He is flanked by his two pro teammates. And how about that? He gets an honour guard from the team. And the Italian outfit will be absolutely pleased to see their AM driver on top in both races here today. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, we take a look to the scenic view, and as we do to those race results subject to any stewards' inquiries, and here they are for your second of your 2 races in the sprint race round at VIR, or Virginia International Raceway, for round number 3 of season 3 of the Sim Racing Collective GT4 series, brought to you on iRacing. And after 25 minutes of fast and furious racing, well, it was said by Shroom1 in the YouTube chat, come on, Tom Davidson, you've got this. And Tom Davidson definitely had it in the end for the Sim Racing Collective Esports in a brilliant back-and-forth battle between himself and Francesco Petalin. And well, in the end, Davidson delivering, and the absolute motorsport ace-lift driver with a minor mistake at NASCAR Bend on the final lap cost himself the chance to attack for the win until the last couple of corners, but by then, Davidson had already nailed his lines and was able to hold on. Still, a great battle between them, and we'll see plenty more of that as the season goes on, especially at Circuit Zolder in a week's time. And behind them, by 11 seconds, it was Alessandro Dalladone for the Italian job, who made sure to keep everybody else at bay. First up on that list, Matt Cheverton, who couldn't quite make it onto the podium for Aztec Racing, but another top 5 finish there. He'll be pleased as punch for that. Hello, Felix Smoggy for Cracked Racing, who completed your top 5, and there was a further 7 seconds back to the next pack of cars, as headed by the Italian job's Ivan Falcone, who put on a phenomenal defensive display today to hold on to 6th and queue up the TSRC pair of Andrew Pike and Kieran Sharp, as well as iRacing Esports' Nick Clemens and also TSRC's Mav Gardner. And that was your top 10, all pro drivers here. And then we do see in 11th place in the AM class, and indeed another AM win, Valerio Petretti. Well, the Italian job driver there, we absolutely proud of that one. A brilliant pair of drives from him today. He was 4 seconds clear of Manx Racing's Craig Murphy, who took the run-up spot in AM and 12th overall, with Daniel Moffat there in 13th place, the privateer, and ran off that AM podium, hot on the heels of the Porsche driver in the end, but he could not find a way through in his BMW. Bart Raven took 4th in AM, 14th overall for Cracked Racing, and round off your AM top 5 was Paul Sims just behind in 15th there, a further 8 seconds adrift. And then saw his 16th, Martin Blankenstein ahead of Francesco Cudulo, with the Passione course driver then being followed up by Martin Rendell in a bit of a frustrating day today, albeit he did in the end take home was 7th place in AM, but I get the feeling not wanting to be anywhere outside the top 5, especially after taking pole position in qualifying, but it has not worked out at all for Martin Rendell. Lenny Hansen took 19th in the end, ahead of Valerio Tedeschi, who completed your top 20, and behind the privateer it was Big Pig Racing by VRS's Clive Bourne, who was your last lead lap finisher in 21st. It was a lap down to Alan McCain for iRacing Esports, as it was for Palamaniti, with McCain having that huge shunt to the barrier at turn number 14 midway through the race. And it was 5 laps down apiece for both Craig Tardock for MSA Racing and Manx Racing's Mark Davenport. And then we did see unfortunate retirements for Marlon Schwab, and also non-start retirements for Sam Smith and Luke Smith. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, that brings all of our racing here at VIR to a close for today. What a pair of races we've had. And well, be sure to let us know in the YouTube chat your thoughts. Have you enjoyed the sprint race round format? Because we've absolutely loved it here in the commentary booth. And we do love our feature races, our 40-minute features. But it's always good to inject some variety and take the strategy out and make it all about the sprint and the full attack. And we definitely got to see a very different complexion of racing, but still very respectful racing at that, and superb fighting from start to finish. But the good news is, if you're wondering, is that it for the broadcast day? Not quite, because we will be back in approximately 5 minutes' time for our post-round interviews with our volunteer drivers. And don't go anywhere, because you won't want to miss them. We will see you again very shortly. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, it is time for our post-round interviews. And we're going to kick off with one of our drivers who's really one of the big stars of the show today in the pro class. It's none other than Francesco Petalin, who joins me now in the interview room. Francesco, good evening to you, and what a round of racing from yourself. I mean, rounds 1 and 2, we saw you were very quick in qualifying, but could not match it in the races. Here today, however, a completely different story. You were having so much fun out there.
Hello. Yeah, I was pretty fast. Yeah, it was really good fighting with Davidson, and in race 2 we had a really good battle. I don't know how much you followed it, but from my side it was I really enjoyed it.
Oh, fantastic. Well, I can tell you one thing. We definitely followed a lot of it in race number 2. Don't you worry about that. But before we talk about the racing a bit further, qualifying, pole position in the end, and all the way through the session, you were constantly at the very top. Do you like VIR?
Uh, Actually, I don't like it so much. I mean, I'm pretty good at it because a lot of rookie races are there, and so I've done lots of races there. But the actual layout isn't that great because there are only a few overtaking opportunities, and they are really dangerous, apart from turn 1 and 3. All the big braking zones are really dangerous to overtake, and it's easy to make a mistake and go out.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. For somebody who's not the biggest fan of VIR, you definitely showed everybody you're very quick here. And with that pole lap going into the race, our first race, of course, 15 minutes in length. How did it feel knowing that all you had to do was hold on for a very short period of time?
Well, to me, it seemed like it never ended. It was so long, longest 15 minutes of my life. Because Davidson is not a chill driver, he's pretty aggressive, and I know it. So having him half a second for 15 minutes, they look like 35, not 15. And the race 2, it was a little bit longer, and I thought maybe I could let him pass because you probably saw that it was a lot easier to follow somebody than stay in the lead, because the slipstream gives you like 3 or 4 times per lap. And so I was trying to let him by and follow him, and I tried to overtake him in the last 2 or 3 laps. Unfortunately, in the last turn of the penultimate lap, I drifted the car a little bit too much, and I've lost the opportunities to overtake him.
I see. Well, a small error in the end, but it did have big consequences. But before we come a bit more into race number 2, race number 1, of course, under pressure all the way through, but finally taking your first win of the season. That must have felt quite special.
Oh yeah, it's a relief for sure, because being quick for so many races and not being able to have a very good result, like at Oulton Park, I could have done a lot better, and also in other races, I could have done better. And yeah, winning race number 1 was really, I was really happy, and really a lot more chill for race number 2, because I told myself, yeah, you've won that race, just bring it home and take a lot of points.
Oh, indeed. Well, you could take the pressure off yourself a little bit. And going into race 2 then, I mean, we saw another brilliant start from yourself. But it was good to hear your thoughts there on deciding to give up the lead to follow Tom Davidson around. I mean, were you worried that perhaps he would break away at some point?
No, I was pretty sure that I would have stayed with him, because I saw pretty clearly that I was a lot faster in the Oak 3 corner, and in the corner before that, so in the fast sector, and he was faster in the slow sector, so in the first one. So I knew that I could stay with him and save some tires. And anyway, we had 7 seconds behind us, so I told myself, yeah, you can stay with him. or if you don't want, you can just chill, and they're not going to take you.
Well, fair play. I think a very good approach to the race. Although, with that mistake you made at the end, I mean, you must have been really annoyed at yourself because we saw it when you made the error and the gap just opened up. You were back with him right at the end, but something tells me you knew at that point there was no way you were going to win.
Yeah, unfortunately, it was something like that because, yeah, that mistake was pretty stupid. It's a typical mistake here in VIR. And I've never done that with the GT4, but I knew it could happen. I was very focused, but yes, something very, very little, because there you can brake like 10% more. The ABS kicks in and you lose all the braking capability of the car. So yeah, in the straight, I thought my BMW was a little bit faster, since it's a tank compared to that Mercedes. I mean, in the size,
Yeah.
it's really, really big. And in the first corner, I was losing a lot, and I thought, yeah, maybe I'm faster in the straight. Actually, I wasn't. We were pretty equal on a straight line.
Well, in the end, you couldn't quite make it back-to-back wins, but still a first and a second, a good pair of results, and a good end to the first half of the season. So on to Circuit Zolder we go. How are you feeling for the trip to Belgium?
Oh, I love that track. I mean, it's really fun to race there. Maybe not qualifying. Uh, VIR is more a qualifying track. Zolder is more a race track. So it's easier to overtake. It's easier to have good battles there, even if slowdowns in the chicanes are not that good and that funny.
Oh, fair play. We look forward to plenty more fast and furious racing from yourself next round. But just before we do let you go, is there anyone you'd like to give a shout out or a thank you to live on the broadcast?
Oh yeah, as always, my team and my team manager that support me as always, and it's really nice to have their livery in my car.
Oh, well, Francesco, we're glad to hear you're really enjoying it with the team and enjoying the race in the beautiful 992 BMW M4 from Absolute Motorsport Aceliv. Well done once again on a brilliant pair of results today. A great way to end the first half of the season for yourself. We look forward to plenty more next round at Circuit Zolder. But until then, my friend, have a great rest of your evening.
Thank you. Good night.
So here and there, ladies and gentlemen, from a very happy Francesco Petrolin, the Absolute Motorsport ACEF driver was a star today, no doubt about it, pushing hard all the way through. And very interesting to hear his thoughts there, the fact that he's not a big fan of the Virginia International Raceway circuit, finds it a very dangerous circuit to battle on. However, the pace he brought to the table was good enough for pole, and he was able to use that and his knowledge of the circuit to hold on. Although openly admitting there, he doesn't enjoy having Tom Davidson right behind him, because the Sim Racing Collective driver is an absolute monster. A fair one at that, but puts so much pressure on. But the fact that 15 minutes felt like the longest 15 minutes of his life definitely showed. And going into race number 2, talking there about it being easier to follow than lead. However, a small error right towards the end cost him that chance, and he knew as soon as he made the error, that was probably it for the win. Nonetheless, happy with the results, very pleased to finally get that first win on the board. And when we go to Circuit Zolder, talking about it there being more of a racing circuit rather than a qualifying lap circuit. And we'll wonder whether we'll see him back on the top step once again, because right now, they normally say it only takes one result to get a championship underway. And for Francesco Petrolin, this round may have been the win and the second place that's definitely galvanised him to even higher results in the second half of the season. Now, we would at this point normally, ladies and gentlemen, say that we're going to be right back in preparation for another interview, but unfortunately, a lot of our drivers, I think, have decided to pack up their tools early and make the way on home. So we're going to make the way to the end of our interviews for today, and therefore we've only heard from one driver, but to be fair, one is better than none, as we always say, and we've had a quality interview with none other than Francesco Petrolin. A huge thank you to him for his time this evening, and really do appreciate it. And, well, as we do just have the slight correction there with that race result right at the end, And well, our interview slide just been a tiny bit erroneous, but all fixed. And we can see there, with as a result of that pole position, a win and a second place in race number 2. And a big thank you to him. And we hope to have plenty more interviews with our drivers up and down the grid as the season goes on. But with that, it is now time for us to wrap up. Thank you very much for watching, and if you have enjoyed today's show, and perhaps you're sat there right now wanting to know more about the Sim Racing Collective in terms of who we are and all the series we do run on an annual basis, and everything else in between, well, you can of course find out more about us via multiple means. First off is our official website at www.tsrc.club, and well, if you do head to our website, which is on screen now, you'll see there it's very straightforward to access and very easy to navigate, with all of our social media on the left hand side. On the bottom we do have all of our partners and affiliates. At the top we've got our pages, including the homepage, news and rules, and right at the centre, the beating heart of the community of course, is the official Discord. And join it today and you can join an absolutely fast growing community full of like-minded individuals who look to put their pedal to the metal on the virtual racing circuit. But if you don't necessarily want to go to our website, perhaps you're more of a social media person, well, the number one place to follow us is on Twitter at twitter.com/TSRC_official. There you can stay up to date with the latest news and announcements and all things the Sim Racing Collective. We'd also like to take a moment to say a big thank you to our partners and affiliates, who do include, of course, Motorsport UK's esports division, SimGrid, Coach Dave Academy, and Abruzzi Simulation and Motorsport. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, well, we turn our attentions to next round, because that was the end of the first half of the season, but we do not put the brakes on it at the Sim Racing Collective. We only do that for the corners, and in a week's time, we invite you to continue to join us for the story of the season, as we will see round number 4 get underway in Belgium at Circuit Zolder, and the return with it of the 40-minute feature race round. Things have been certainly shaken today, with some brilliant performances up and down the field. In Pro, we've got to see Francesco Petrolin and Tom Darrington share the spoils at the very top. Also some fast charges from the likes of Kieran Sharp, and also none other than Alessandro Dalladone and Matt Cheverton. Meanwhile, in the AM class, Valerio Petretti dominated proceedings, with Craig Murphy and Daniel Moffat also picking up some major points, and Bart Raven relishing his opportunity to shine in the AM class. But who exactly will be on top, and how will the story continue in Belgium? Well, you have to tune in next time to find out. But until then, we have been the Sim Racing Collective. I've been your host and commentator, Paul Walsh, also known as TX141 or Britain Spit, depending on what media you follow me on. And until next time, we have to stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, and as always, I like our drives, ladies and gentlemen. Make sure, most importantly, to stay on track. Good night.